Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Once again, we will be exploring true horror stories taken directly from various Reddit pages. For those who are new to the channel, I will be adding software to my voice to make it a little scarier, so don't be confused when I sound a little different. If you guys enjoy the video, be sure to subscribe, it really does help the channel grow. Without further ado, let's get started.
There's a man in my garden. He's still standing there after 3 days. It started 3 nights ago. I was washing dishes when I looked up and saw him. A man. He was at the border of my garden just beyond the fence, indistinct in the dim light of the street lamp. I had thought at first that I was imagining it. Maybe a tree casting some strange shadow. But no, he was there. I didn't see his face, but I knew that he was looking at me. Just standing, not stirring. A shiver ran down my spine. I live alone. My house borders a small patch of woods, but I've never seen anyone out there before, at least not at night. I was paralyzed in front of the sink, thudding heart racing inside me. And then, after what felt like forever, I forced myself to turn away. Maybe he was just a drunk guy who had wandered farther than he should have. Maybe if I turned around, he'd vanish. I went to bed, trying to convince myself that everything was okay. The next morning I peered out the window. He was gone. A flash of relief swept over me. Probably just some temporary freak. That night, as I was locking down the building, I gazed out. He was back once more. Same spot, same stance. He hadn't budged. A prickle of discomfort crept up my spine. I grabbed my phone and hesitated, deciding whether or not to call the police. What would I even say? There's a man standing by my fence. That wasn't illegal, just creepy. So I did something else. I flipped on the garden light. He didn't blink. I crept closer to the glass, my breath misting on the cold window. Nothing, no shifting, no blinking. He just stood there, watching. I closed the curtains and tried to sleep, but my head was racing with thoughts. What if he was planning something? What if he was waiting for me to lower my guard? Tiredness eventually got the better of me. I had to have slept because the next thing I knew, my alarm was blaring. Morning. I leaped out of bed and ran to the window. Gone again. The pattern was repeated the next night, and the one after that. Every evening exactly at sundown, he would appear. Staying in one spot, never moving, never speaking. By the third night, I broke. I took a flashlight, my heart thudding, and stepped outside onto my rear porch. Cold air stung my face and my exhalations blasted out in tight white gusts. He didn't move. I made another step, holding the beam on him, and that is when I last saw his face. Or better, the lack of it. His skin was smooth, featureless. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just a smooth, blank, pale surface, as though something had cleaned him out. I took a step back, a scream caught in my throat. The flashlight flashed. For the first time in 3 nights, he moved. Not much. Just a jerk of the head, slow and jerky, as though he were nodding to me. Then he took a step forward. I ran. I slammed the door, locked it, and closed the curtains in the entire house. I shook too much to call the police. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen instead and sat against the wall, forcing myself to listen. Silence. No knocking. No scratching. No creak of footsteps on the porch. But I knew he was still there. I barely slept. When morning came, I forced myself to look. Gone. I phoned my friend, told them I was sick, and spent the day at their place. I lied to them. Now I'm home. The sun is setting, and I'm scared to look out, because I know what I will see. He'll be standing there, waiting. And sooner or later, he's going to move closer. I'm waiting for my brother to either call himself or get his life together. Today my younger brother turned 21. No party, no celebration. He refused to read the birthday card from our grandma. He did not even want to blow out the candles on his cake. Ever since I was about 12, I knew my parents were failing him. He was a hyperactive kid, so they pumped full of ADHD medication, which gave him insomnia and anxiety. So they put him on anxiety meds and sleeping pills, which made him depressed, so they put him on antidepressants. All before age 10. He was given a computer at a young age and was completely addicted immediately. My parents set no boundaries in terms of usage, so he would play all day every day, sometimes late into the night before school. As you can imagine, this resulted in him becoming antisocial, ruined his grades, and prevented him from participating in any meaningful activities like sport or clubs. I would get into screaming matches with my mother over the fact that she needed to take the computer away from him. Then our other family members started expressing concern, then teachers. Our parents did nothing. Edit. This occurred when I was ages 12 to 14. Later, he was diagnosed with celiac disease, which explained his difficulty concentrating and other problems he had been experiencing. My parents provided him with gluten-free food for about 6 months before giving up. It was all too hard. Pathetic, I know. So he has now been eating gluten as a known celiac for the past 6 years. I have had a million discussions with him and my family about how much damage this causes, and they pretend to care, but are too lazy to do anything about it. I tried providing education. I tried giving meal ideas and grocery lists. I tried cooking gluten-free meals for the family. They do not change. As I became an adult, I would speak to other family members and family friends who agreed that what my parents were doing was wrong. They would agree that he needed the computer taken away, that he needed to be disciplined, and that he needed to stop eating gluten. At that point, so much damage had been done, and he ended up dropping out of high school 8 months from graduation. His reason? Our mother couldn't drive him, and he didn't like walking to school. My brother is not an idiot. My parents are both well-educated and intelligent people. Why they have made these choices I can only assume is to avoid temporary discomfort. He has been to so many psychologists, and nothing has helped. One psych refused to continue seeing him because he was refusing to accept help. Over the years, he had expressed how depressed he is, but seems to have no desire to be helped. He has threatened suicide a dozen times but never acted on it. When he does this, I urge my parents to take him to hospital, to call an ambulance. But then he is suddenly all better. He uses suicide as a threat to get what he wants from them, and they don't see it. I know the way I'm thinking might sound extremely harsh, but truly, I feel at this point he either does a complete 360 or simply ends his own life. Sadly, the latter is more likely to happen. I have exhausted all my options. He is unemployed and will not apply for jobs. He does not want to try any new hobbies. He refuses to volunteer anywhere. He knows that I am here for him whenever he needs, but he does not want help. At the end of the day, there is nothing left I can do unless he chooses to help himself. We have both been dealt the same cards in life. I have not been exempt from problems in my life. I have had low points. Arguably, I have faced far greater challenges than him. But I have made the best of what I have. I have helped myself. He has decided this life for himself. In the past year, I have had to stop trying and simply let go as other priorities in my life take over. I'm currently working full-time and saving for a house deposit with my partner. We plan on getting married and having children as soon as financially possible. Once I have children, they will be my top priority. I fear that when our parents eventually pass away, I will be the only person left in his life. At that point, I will not be able to help him. I just had to confess the way I feel. I know it is horrible, but it is the most realistic conclusion to this problem. Tell me I am an asshole. Tell me there is something I can do. Edit. I do not live with my family anymore. For the people saying I don't understand ADHD, I also have it but was diagnosed later in life. As is typical for most girls, it wasn't picked up when I was young. I have also suffered with severe depression and suicidal thoughts, but have chosen to reach out for help and work on developing healthy coping mechanisms. I didn't want to provide too many details about myself because I wanted my brother to be the focus on the post, but thought this would provide some more context. I got sad by my stepdad, and I haven't told my mom. My mom remarried my stepdad about 10 years ago. At first, he was nice. There would be yelling and arguments from time to time between them, but it was fine for a few years. My stepdad started drinking every night, and the yelling, slamming doors, and calling my mom names got worse. During COVID, we all stayed home. At this time, I was 16 years old, and I would stay up all night playing on my Xbox with friends online. And about 1 to 2 a.m. every day, my stepdad would start coming in my room drunk while I played online. I didn't really think of anything at first. BCs, he would just sit there and talk to me about school, game, etc. One night he came in and sat down next to me and put his hand on my leg and started moving. His hand up my leg, I flinched, and he walked out. The next night he came in, and I pretended to be asleep, hoping he would just leave, but he didn't. He climbed in my bed, and I stayed as still as possible. He then touched me inappropriately, and I told him no, and he continued. I kept trying to push him off of me and tried to scream, but he covered my mouth with his hand, and then proceeded to roddy me. And I cried the entire time. I felt so disgusted, and I hated myself after it happened. I woke up the next morning, and he didn't even know what happened that night, and I should have told my mom what happened, but I was scared she wouldn't believe me, and she would put me in a mental hospital. BC's, my sister, had told my mom he touched her inappropriately about a year before that happened, and she didn't believe my sister, and I didn't believe her myself, and I felt so stupid that I didn't believe her now. I still have never told my mom or anyone about what happened that night, but I should have. BC, as things got worse after that night. He started being really abusive, and he would hit me and my mom. We finally called the cops, and he got arrested for domestic abuse. I'm now 20 years old, and my mom is in the middle of divorcing him, and I'm so happy about that. I'm just not sure telling her after 4 years is a good idea. My mental health has been so bad ever since that happened. There's just so much weight on my chest, and it hurts so much. Has anyone else been seeing things after having a baby? So, I'm about 3 months postpartum, and I was wondering if any fellow moms have been experiencing this weird, what I can only guess, postpartum symptom. I'm hesitant to ask anyone I know for fear of them thinking I might be crazy, but I am desperate for answers because I feel like I'm losing my mind. Anytime my baby cries, or I lose my patience with my husband, I see this thing just out of the corner of my eye. I'm not even sure how to describe it. It's almost like if a spider was a person. All lanky arms and long skinny legs with gray paper-thin skin, and sunken black eyes hugging the walls as though it were growing out of them. I've only seen brief glimpses of it in those moments, seen it disappearing around corners or sinking behind door frames. Once or twice, I swore I saw it scuttling into a dark, shadowy spot on the ceiling. Just little things that I could write off as the sleep-deprived effects of a horror movie lover's mind. Until yesterday. Yesterday, I was changing the baby after a nap, and he would not stop crying, his high-pitched wails piercing my ears like needles being shoved directly into my cochlea. Tears pricked my eyes as I zipped up his onesie, praying to whatever god there may be that he would calm down long enough for me to regain my sanity. Click, click, click. I paused my oncoming breakdown, the clicking taking me out of the crushing sense of defeat for a moment. Click, click, click. My eyebrows furrowed upon hearing it again. Slowly, I turned my head in the direction of the sound, and there it was, at the edge of my sight. Peering around the doorframe was an emaciated figure shrouded in shadows. I froze, not wanting to look directly at it for fear it would attack me or my son if it knew I could see it. My heart was racing. My son's cries were now muffled, background noise to the sound of that thing's horrible crackling joints. I could feel myself beginning to tremble, the tears from before now freely spilling down my cheeks. Slowly, I pulled my son closer to me, now only small squeaks and soft mms escaping him as he nuzzled into my chest, unaware of the horror that loomed just a few feet away. "Hey, babe. Do you remember where we put the extra bottles? The rest aren't finished being sanitized yet." The sound of my husband's voice startled me out of my fear-frozen state, and I snapped my eyes shut for a moment, and in that moment, The thing had vanished. No clicks, no footsteps, not even the sound of a parting breath. Shocked, I looked around frantically, hoping that the thing hadn't scurried away to some other part of the room and wasn't lying in wait to try and ambush my baby, and once I moved. Nothing. I heard my husband coming up the stairs and tried to collect myself before he could see how frazzled I was. "Elena? You up here?" His sturdy frame entered the doorway, his dark brows furrowed in innocent confusion that melted into concern as his eyes fell on me. "Are you okay?" I stared back at him, wide-eyed and teary, from my spot by the changing table. For some reason, I felt like I couldn't tell him. I was sure he'd think I was crazy. And maybe I am. Yeah, I just had some healing pain in my stomach, and Gabriel wouldn't stop crying, and I just got so overwhelmed, and his strong arms took me in, hugging me gently, our son enveloped between his parents, warm and safe. This should have eased me. This should have taken all of my fears away. This should have set everything right. But I could hear it again. Click. 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 Please, for the love of God, tell me some of you other freshly postpartum moms have experienced something like this. Please tell me I'm not crazy. Please tell me that me and my family are safe. Please.